called them a catastrophe, a career killer, an embarrassment worth forgetting. The studio executives who greenlit them, fired, the directors, blacklisted. The films themselves, dumped into theaters with zero promotion, left to bleed out in empty screening rooms while the trades gleefully reported the carnage. These films flopped so hard that studios lost millions. Critics shrugged and audiences walked away confused and disappointed. Careers stalled, franchises died, and in some cases they were quietly buried, written off as expensive mistakes that never should have existed. The box office said failure. History said masterpieces. So here's the question nobody wants to answer. What if the biggest disasters were actually the most important films ever made? What if being too bold, too dark, too brilliant for your own moment is exactly what makes you immortal? In this video, we're uncovering 12 sci-fi box office disasters that secretly became masterpieces. Films punished for refusing to play it safe. Films that lost the battle but won the war. And as we count them down, you'll start to notice a disturbing pattern. The bigger the failure, the more important the film eventually became. Number 12. Stalker, 1979. Stalker arrived in theaters as a science fiction film that seemed almost determined to fail. There were no space battles, no futuristic cities, no heroic arcs audiences could easily latch onto. Instead, it followed three men moving slowly through a forbidden landscape known only as the Zone, a place rumored to grant a person's deepest desire, yet surrounded by decay, danger, and quiet dread. Viewers expecting spectacle were left restless. Many walked out confused, others dismissed it as pretentious or impenetrable. Financially, it struggled to justify its existence. What audiences did not know was that the film itself had nearly been destroyed before it ever reached them. Large portions were lost during production, forcing the director to reshoot almost the entire movie. The process drained resources, strained health, and delayed release. By the time Stalker finally emerged, it felt out of step with everything science fiction was becoming. Faster, louder, more optimistic. This film moved in the opposite direction. At the center of Stalker is not technology, but faith. The three men represent conflicting ways of confronting the unknown. One seeks knowledge, one seeks meaning. The guide who leads them seeks neither, yet believes completely in the Zone's power. As they move deeper, the film strips away certainty. The Zone does not attack, it observes, it waits. The danger is not external, it is internal. What happens when you reach the place that can give you what you want and realize you may not understand yourself well enough to ask? Over time, critics and filmmakers began to reassess what they had dismissed. Stalker was not slow, it was deliberate. It was not empty, it was restrained. Its influence quietly spread. Through modern science fiction, inspiring films that value atmosphere, ambiguity, and moral unease over answers. Stalker failed because it asked for patience when audiences wanted escape. It endured because it offered something rarer. A science fiction story that does not promise the future will save us, only that it will reveal us. And that uncomfortable truth is where this entire list was always leading. Number 11, Fight Club, 1999. Fight Club opened in theaters carrying the weight of confusion. It was bleak, it was uncomfortable, and it refused to offer a clear moral compass. As a result, ticket sales stalled. Studio confidence collapsed. Executives quickly distanced themselves from a movie they no longer knew how to explain. At first glance, Fight Club did not look like science fiction at all. It had no spaceships, no future setting, no advanced technology, but beneath its surface, realism was something far more speculative. The film imagined a society hollowed out by consumer identity, where people no longer recognize themselves outside the systems they served. The unnamed narrator does not escape to another planet. He escapes into an altered reality of his own making. A fractured consciousness becomes the technology. Psychological manipulation becomes the experiment. What disturbed audiences most was the film's refusal to reassure them. Violence was not framed as heroic. Rebellion was not clean. The charismatic figure leading the charge was not a savior. He was a warning. The story dismantled masculinity, capitalism, and identity without telling viewers what to replace them with. That ambiguity made people uneasy. Critics argued over whether the film was endorsing chaos or condemning it. Many walked away angry. Others simply stayed away. Then something unexpected happened. Fight Club found a second life. On home video, viewers had time to sit with it, to notice the structure, the satire, the carefully planted clues. What once felt reckless began to feel precise. The film was not celebrating destruction. It was exposing how seductive it could be. And the next entry proves that failure does not always come from controversy. Sometimes it comes from being too quiet, too emotional, and too sincere for the moment it appears. Number 10. Tron, 1982. When Tron entered theaters in 1982, audiences had never seen that kind of futuristic sci-fi before, and that unfamiliarity became its greatest obstacle. The film did not simply introduce a new world, it introduced a new way of visualizing reality itself. Computer environments became physical spaces, code became architecture, human identity was translated into glowing lines and geometric light. In 1982, most viewers had no frame of reference for what they were watching. Instead of wonder, many felt distance. Instead of excitement, confusion. The story followed a programmer pulled inside a digital system ruled by authoritarian control. Programs worshipped users as gods. Authority was enforced through surveillance and ritualized combat. These ideas were radical, but they were delivered through imagery so new that the message struggled to land. Critics admired the ambition but questioned the emotional core. The characters were described as cold, the story as thin. What was missed was that Tron was not trying to imitate human warmth. It was exploring identity inside a system designed to erase it. Individuality was the threat, conformity was safety, freedom was dangerous. Commercially, the film underperformed. Studios did not know how to classify it. It was too strange for children and too abstract for mainstream adults. Awards bodies struggled to even categorize its visual effects because they relied on computers rather than traditional techniques. Years later, the world Tron imagined stopped feeling theoretical. Digital spaces became places where people worked, played, and lived portions of their identities. Suddenly, its questions felt urgent. Who controls the systems we depend on? What happens when technology defines value? Where does belief exist in a programmed world? Those questions then take us to the next movie. Number 9. Starship Troopers, 1997. At first glance, Starship Troopers looked like a loud, straightforward war movie set in space. Soldiers in polished armor, rousing speeches, an enemy that could be crushed with enough firepower. That surface-level promise is exactly why audiences walked into the theater unprepared. The world of Starship Troopers is not heroic. It is seductive. Citizenship is earned through violence. Media broadcasts feel more like propaganda than information. Smiling anchors celebrate destruction with cheerful slogans. The film presents this universe without commentary, forcing the audience to sit inside it rather than be guided through it. For many viewers, that restraint felt like endorsement. Critics accused the film of glorifying authoritarianism and cruelty. Ticket sales reflected the backlash. What was misunderstood was intent. The film was not asking viewers to cheer. It was daring them to notice. Director Paul Verhoeven constructed a future that mimicked the language and aesthetics of fascist spectacle, then stripped it of irony. The characters are attractive, confident, and emotionally shallow because the system rewards obedience, not reflection. War becomes entertainment, death becomes content. At the time, that approach was too uncomfortable. The satire required distance and patience. Without it, the film felt morally confusing. It did not announce its critique, it embedded it. And that misunderstanding only deepened more with the next movie. A film that imagined control so absolute that freedom itself became illegal. Number 8. Dark City, 1998. Nothing about Dark City behaves the way audiences expect it to. The film opens in the middle of confusion, refusing to orient the viewer or explain its rules. A man wakes up with no memory. A city rearranges itself while people sleep. Time feels artificial. Identity feels temporary. From the first minutes, the film signals that comfort will not be offered. That decision cost it dearly. Marketing did the film no favors. Key revelations were exposed early, robbing the story of discovery. Viewers walked in already braced for twists instead of being allowed to experience them. What remained was a dense, unsettling atmosphere that many mistook for emptiness. The box office response reflected that misfire. Dark City slipped through theaters quickly, labeled stylish but hollow. What audiences missed was how carefully the film constructed its world. This was not a mystery meant to be solved quickly. It was a meditation on control. The city itself is a prison. Memory is currency. Personal history is rewritten nightly by unseen overseers who study humanity like an experiment. People are not valued for who they are, but for how they respond when stripped of choice. The film refuses traditional heroes and villains. The figures in control are not conquerors driven by hate. They are desperate beings trying to understand life they can no longer experience. That moral ambiguity unsettled viewers expecting clear opposition. Dark City offered none. Everyone is trapped. Everyone is compromised. Over time, its influence became impossible to ignore. The visual language, the obsession with artificial reality, the idea that identity can be manufactured. Films that followed borrowed its questions, often without acknowledging the source. What once felt obscure began to feel foundational. Dark City failed because it trusted its audience too much. It assumed patience. It assumed curiosity. It assumed viewers would lean forward rather than wait to be led. And what follows further proves that even gentleness and heart can be rejected when they arrive without the marketing muscle to protect them. Number 7, Strange Days, 1995. Strange Days arrived during a cultural moment obsessed with spectacle, yet it offered something raw, anxious, and confrontational. The story revolves around a device that records human experience directly from the mind, allowing users to relive sensations exactly as they happen. Pleasure, fear, power, trauma, nothing is filtered, nothing is safe. Audiences recoiled. The film was intense, morally exhausting, and uninterested in comfort. Instead of using its technology as a fantasy, Strange Days treated it as a weapon. Experiences were bought, sold, and exploited. Violence was not stylized, it was invasive. Viewers were forced to confront what it means to consume someone else's reality for entertainment. That discomfort translated into weak box office numbers. At the time, the film felt excessive. Too angry, too dark, too cynical. Critics struggled to categorize it. Was it thriller, science fiction, social commentary, or something else entirely? That ambiguity hurt its commercial prospects. It did not fit neatly into the expectations of 1990s audiences who wanted escapism rather than confrontation. Years later, the film reads differently. Surveillance culture expanded. Media became more invasive. Personal trauma turned into content. What once seemed extreme now feels disturbingly plausible. Strange Days was not predicting technology, it was exposing desire. The desire to feel more, see more, and care less about the cost. And what comes next is a movie that proves that sometimes most films don't fail because they're disturbing, but because they're too gentle for an industry that forgot how to protect sincerity. Number 6, The Iron Giant, 1999. A massive metal figure falls from the sky, and instead of destruction, the story begins with fear, curiosity, and friendship. That alone made The Iron Giant an anomaly. At a time when animated films were expected to be loud, comedic, and easily marketable, this one moved quietly. It trusted emotion, it trusted stillness, and that trust was not rewarded at the box office. The film struggled not because audiences rejected it, but because many never knew it existed. Marketing was minimal, promotion was scattered. By the time word of mouth began to spread, it was already disappearing from theaters. Financially, it failed. Creatively, it was doing something rare. At its core, The Iron Giant is not about robots or invasions. It is about choice. The giant is a weapon by design, but not by nature. The story asks whether identity is defined by purpose or by decision. That question unfolds gently, without speeches or spectacle. The relationship between the boy and the machine is built on trust, not destiny. What made Iron Giant special was its refusal to simplify. Fear was understandable. Authority was not villainized, but questioned. Sacrifice was portrayed as meaningful, not triumphant. The final message was not about victory, but about becoming something better. than what you were made to be. Over time, audiences found it. Critics revisited it, filmmakers cited it. The Iron Giant became a quiet benchmark for emotional storytelling in science fiction. It failed because it whispered when the market demanded noise. And the tonal shift that comes with the next film abandons innocence and dives headfirst into chaos, excess, and imagination without restraint. Number 5. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, 1988. Chaos followed this film long before audiences ever saw a single frame of it. Budgets spiraled, schedules collapsed, studio confidence evaporated. By the time The Adventures of Baron Munchausen finally reached theaters, it was already labeled a disaster behind the scenes. That label stuck, and the box office reflected it. The film became shorthand for excess, indulgence, and creative recklessness. What audiences received, however, was not a failure of imagination. It was an overload of it. The story follows a legendary storyteller whose tales blur so completely with reality that it becomes impossible to separate truth from exaggeration. He travels to the moon, descends into the belly of a sea monster, and recruits companions with impossible abilities. To viewers expecting a conventional fantasy or family adventure, the film felt unruly. There was no clean structure, no modern pacing, no clear sense of restraint. Critics dismissed it as self-indulgent. Studios saw it as proof that unchecked creativity was dangerous. But that reaction missed the point. Munchausen was not trying to be efficient. It was trying to be boundless. Every frame overflowed with practical effects, handcrafted sets, and visual ideas that refused repetition. The film treated imagination itself as an act of rebellion against bureaucracy, logic, and authority. Over time, the very qualities that doomed it became its strengths. The tactile visuals stood apart from digital sameness. The unapologetic storytelling felt refreshing in retrospect. Filmmakers began citing it as a rare example of fantasy unconcerned with market logic. Then comes the next movie, a film that pushes fear and paranoia to the surface, proving that rejection often comes fastest when a film refuses to reassure its viewers. Number 4, Gattaca, 1997. Everything about Gattaca is quiet by design. There are no massive action sequences, no alien threats, no technological spectacle meant to impress. Instead, the film presents a future that feels clean, controlled, and eerily calm. That subtlety worked against it the moment it hit theaters. Audiences struggled to connect with a science fiction film that refused to announce itself as one. The stakes were personal rather than global. The conflict unfolded through conversations, glances, and silent resistance. As a result, ticket sales never matched the film's ambition. Gattaca faded quickly from the box office. The premise, however, was razor-sharp. In this future, genetic profiling determines worth. Careers, relationships, and social standing are decided before birth. The protagonist is born without genetic advantages and spends his life impersonating someone society deems superior. His rebellion is not violent, it is discipline. Every day becomes an act of defiance against a system that claims perfection while erasing humanity. What audiences missed was how radical the film's restraint was. Gattaca trusted viewers to recognize the danger without exaggeration. It did not invent monsters. It simply extended existing anxieties about selection, optimization, and exclusion. The future it portrayed was not cruel because it hated imperfection. It was cruel because it pretended imperfection no longer mattered. As genetic science advanced, the film's relevance grew. What once felt distant became uncomfortably current. Gattaca transformed from overlooked drama into one of the most cited cautionary tales in modern science fiction. It failed because it whispered a warning when audiences expected a spectacle. And the next entry swings in the opposite direction, stripping spectacle away entirely to expose a future that feels disturbingly possible. Number 3, SeaQuest DSV, 1993. On paper, SeaQuest DSV looked like a safe bet, a futuristic exploration vessel, a disciplined crew, a mission built around discovery and diplomacy. The only twist was location. Instead of deep space, the frontier was Earth's oceans. That single change should have made it distinctive. Instead, it became the reason audiences dismissed it. Viewers expected wonder and adventure. What they got was something far more grounded and unsettling. The ocean in SeaQuest was not a playground. It was a contested space shaped by environmental collapse, military tension, and political greed. Episodes dealt with pollution, genetic experimentation, underwater warfare, and corporate exploitation. The threats were not abstract, they were familiar, just pushed beneath the surface. Behind the scenes, the series struggled with identity. Networks pushed for broader appeal, tones shifted, creative leadership changed. That instability confused audiences and weakened trust. Ratings declined, and the show was quietly written off as another expensive experiment that never found its footing. SeaQuest failed because it was ahead of a conversation audiences were not ready to have. A future where Earth itself becomes the final frontier, and the danger comes from how we manage what we already own. And the next movie takes that idea even further, imagining a future where the dream of unity has already collapsed. Number 2, Andromeda, 2000. Andromeda begins after the dream has died. A once powerful interstellar alliance has fallen. Civilizations have fractured into fear-driven systems ruled by survival rather than cooperation. When Captain Dylan Hunt awakens from centuries of isolation, he does not inherit a bright future. He inherits failure. To casual viewers, the setup felt familiar. A lone captain, a powerful ship, a diverse crew assembled to restore balance. Comparisons to Star Trek were immediate and relentless. That comparison damaged the show's reputation before it could define itself. Ratings suffered. Momentum stalled. Andromeda was quickly labeled derivative and pushed aside. What that label ignored was the show's central conflict. This was not a story about exploration. It was about rebuilding ideals in a universe that no longer trusted them. Hunt believed order could be restored through diplomacy and moral clarity. The galaxy responded with betrayal, violence, and compromise. Every attempt at unity came at a cost. Every alliance felt temporary. The show repeatedly questioned whether optimism survives catastrophe or whether it becomes a liability. Characters were forced to choose between principles and survival. Victories felt fragile. Progress was slow and often reversed. The future was not a destination, it was a negotiation. And the final entry takes that broken future and strips it down to its rawest form, leaving only a small crew, a fragile bond, and the stubborn refusal to give up hope. Number 1, Blade Runner, 1982. Rain falls endlessly on a city that never sleeps yet never feels alive. Neon lights flicker against concrete towers. Humanity survives, but warmth does not. From its opening moments, Blade Runner makes it clear this is not a future meant to inspire comfort. That choice alone doomed it on arrival. Audiences in 1982 expected adventure. What they got was silence, ambiguity, and moral exhaustion. The film moved slowly, deliberately, forcing viewers to sit inside its atmosphere rather than escape from it. Its questions were not answered. Its hero was not heroic. Its ending refused clarity. Box office numbers reflected the disconnect. Blade Runner was labeled cold, confusing, and emotionally distant, a failure. What was misunderstood was its intent. The film was not asking whether machines could become human. It was asking whether humans already were. Replicants displayed fear, love, and desperation. The people hunting them moved through life numbed by routine and obedience. The line separating creator and creation dissolved quietly, scene by scene. Studio interference damaged its initial release. Explanations were added where none were needed. Trust in the audience was compromised. Only later, when those changes were removed, did the film reveal its true shape. A meditation on memory, identity, mortality, what it means to matter when time is limited. As years passed, the world Blade Runner imagined stopped feeling fictional. Urban sprawl expanded. Technology infiltrated intimacy. Human connection thinned. What once felt bleak began to feel accurate. Filmmakers returned to it, scholars dissected it, audiences finally caught up. Now back to you. Which of these films surprised you the most, and which one deserves rediscovery today? Drop your pick in the comments. If you love uncovering forgotten sci-fi, buried masterpieces, and movies the industry tried to erase, like the video, share it with another fan, and subscribe to Vintaverse for more deep dives into retro cinema.